As we've seen across America in recent years, interactions between law enforcement and civilians can go horribly wrong. Washington, D.C.-based ER physician Dr. Geoffrey Varner has written a book to help get yourself or your children and police home safely after an encounter with officers. Here's today to share some of those tips. Good morning, Dr. Varner. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. This is an updated version of the book that was written 2 years ago. First of all, let's talk about how things have changed in those 2 years. What have you seen happen, evolve, change?
Unfortunately, the data shows that things have not changed much, even in light of the fact that officers now have these body cameras, and we actually thought things were like going to change, but the data shows that the violence and the police killings have not decreased at all.
And a lot of people think that this is just kind of an inner city phenomenon, but it goes into every neighborhood.
Great, that's a very good point. A new study just came out of Yale that basically shows that many of us think that most of these killings happen in the inner city. This data shows that 60% of the killings happen in the suburbs and rural areas. It's not the inner city. So this is more of an American crisis that impacts all of us.
The book is called Home Alive, and it's written for whom?
It is written for anyone who has loved ones who want to make it home alive. While black males are disproportionately affected, it is all young people, because we have the highest number of police killings than any other industrialized country.
Now, what about someone who says, well, I'm looking at this book, are you bashing police? Are you making people fearful of police unnecessarily? That's not the case, is it?
Oh, no, this book is absolutely not a police bashing book. Don't get me wrong. It speaks truth to that power and uses real data. But the whole goal of this book is to survive that stop. And the studies show that actually most officers, 96% of them, want to do the right thing. So this is not about bashing the police. This is about getting our loved ones home alive, and the police can actually, it actually helps them get home alive too.
You're an emergency room doctor, you're a father, you're a black man.
Yes.
How do all those things influence why you wanted to write this book?
So it's funny, because I've been practicing emergency medicine for like 20 years. I interact with officers a lot and get to see both sides of it. And once my son became old enough to be killed by the police, he is 12 now, it made me view it differently. And so I started doing research, and what I found was there's a lot of stories out there and explaining the problem, but there was very little information that empowered parents of how to teach their kids how to survive stops.
This is kind of a written version of the talk or the conversation that a lot of families have, just basically informing their children of things that you should and should not do when you are stopped by police or have an encounter with police. You've got 11 important tips in the book. Let's start with some of them. One of the things that you say when you're pulled over in a car, when you're driving, if you have friends with you, everybody's pulled over. Everybody needs to know how to act.
So that is key. When pulled over, everyone is pulled over. People think that when they're pulled over that it's only the officer. No, the officer is concerned about everyone's hands. And keep in mind, the officer wants to make it home alive too. And the officer always says, and I've interviewed hundreds of them, it's people's hands that can kill them. And so while you may be doing everything, if your friend in the back is mouthing off or they're moving with their hands, it puts everybody in jeopardy.
Also, though, having friends with you can help in one instance where you say, if the situation starts to escalate, record the incident.
Yes, so recording the incidents, it's helpful and nice, but one of the rules is obey the officer as well. So if the officer tells you to put the camera down, you don't have to turn it off, but put it down, because your whole goal is to de-escalate before things escalate.
Mm-hmm. One of the messages you have in the book for parents is be a superhero. What does that mean?
So be a superhero basically means that often we are pulled over with our kids there. And so sometimes, because of how we're held in our houses as being, we're held with great regard. So when you're pulled over and an officer maybe talks to you in the wrong way, you've already trained you're like kids, that you're going to be a superhero. You're going to act as if the officer's kind to you. You're not going to let the officer draw you out of your emotions. You're going to rise above in the interest of making it home alive, and you're like kids making it home alive too.
And also on the other side of that, you mentioned that police officers also want to make it home alive. Every time they walk up to a car, every time they walk into a situation, they have that nervousness, that anticipation as well.
Right. So the most dangerous encounters for the officers are traffic stops and domestic calls. So most officers, your first goal when stopped is to make the officer feel safe. Because once the officer feels safe, that automatically de-escalates the situation. And don't forget, the whole goal is to make it home alive.
For everyone involved.
For everyone, exactly.
What's the feedback you've been getting on the book?
I've gotten great feedback, and I know that it's in a sweet spot. Many officer organizations love it, and many parents do. Now, there are some parents who don't like it because they want it to be a rah book, and there's a time for that. But this book is about surviving the stop. And one of the points is, it's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of getting home alive and dealing later with what went wrong, if anything went wrong after all.
What was the reaction from your son, your 12-year-old son?
My son, he was the one that helped motivate write it, because we used to always go and watch the videos whenever there was an incident. And one day, he said, "Daddy, what are you doing?" And that led me to do some of my research. And the next thing I know, I realized that I needed to empower all parents. And given that I'm an ER doctor, I interacted with our officers a lot, and officers felt very comfortable being open and honest. So these are developed skills that people can teach their kids, communities, and police officers can teach the community as well, and it helps everyone make it home alive.
A good book to read together as a family.
It's a great book to read together as a family.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Again, the book is called Home Alive, 11 Must Steps for Surviving Encounters with Police. It's by Dr. Geoffrey Varner.